right, welcome back, Alex, for the third part of this mini-series. So kind of talking again a bit more about, cybersecurity. We're seeing a lot of AI-driven phishing and automated attacks. Why is a non-standardized tech stack sort of the biggest open door for these threats?
Yeah, so standardization is key in cybersecurity because you want to have your clients' email protection standardized, definitely their antivirus endpoint protection standardized, MFA solutions, ITDR, and then definitely getting into like SOC, MDR, and stuff like that. If you have 7 different email security platforms, it's going to be so much harder for your techs to manage. You're not going to have the same policies you can push. So like our MSP uses Mesh, and they've had a great experience with that, being able to just standardize all the policies across all clients. And without standardization, it's just much more difficult.
I'm wondering how, let's say there's an MSP who has gone through that process, has really standardized their stack, is doing QBRs, is sort of doing all the right things. But during a sales process, the prospect says, okay, it's between you and this other MSP, and they're cheaper. Convince me why I should pay more for you. We've had that problem before where it's sometimes a little hard to provide that education of the importance of the level of service you're providing when they're just looking at dollar signs and how much things cost and don't see some of the hidden costs that come with going with a cheaper, lower end service. How do you think an MSP should go about solving that sort of education problem and explaining to a prospect of like, no, here's why there's value in paying us a bit more and more safety that comes along with it?
Yeah, with tech and cybersecurity, cheap is very expensive often. It's the same thing as like you should not get the cheapest roofing quote.
Right.
And you shouldn't go to the cheapest dentist or the cheapest attorney or the cheapest, name it, anything that's really important in life, right? Making sure that you communicate that you have a comprehensive solution and that there's a reason why your price is the price. Now, there's definitely a number of companies out there that do always go after the cheapest in every element of their business. And they're usually companies that are less successful than the companies that are buying with more of understanding of the value. But definitely painting it that you have a more comprehensive solution, that you have strategic guidance through a vCIO program, that you are delivering fast support, better support than the most of the industry. And there's lots of ways to prove it. You can even show them live dashboards. So if you're using MSPbots or BrightGauge, I would recommend having a dashboard that shows how fast your support is that you can show prospects. And then having SimpleSat, you can show them a list of real client reviews, right? And then, once you get a good reputation built up with reviews, delivering a competitive price, you're not going to win every client no matter what. So be confident in your price, have it be grounded in some logic, that it's a fair price for you to be able to generate the right experience. There are definitely some people that are running around delivering extremely cheap prices out there, but those companies usually have extreme high turnover of people. I would also explain to companies that you don't want the cheapest provider because if the person that's doing your work is just gone the next month, a lot of tech and cybersecurity is all based on kind of the knowledge, right? So documentation only goes so far. A lot of things are in people's heads. You don't want a provider or a partner that is the cheapest in the market that then is going to be cutting corners. They're not going to be picking the best in breed solutions. They're not going to be retaining their people as well. If you explain that to somebody, a lot of times they get it, and if they don't, then it's probably the client that you do not want, because they're going to want to be the cheapest on computers, which is so short-sighted. Like if you're hiring somebody in America, averaged out, that person's salary, let's just say $75,000, averaged out between your most expensive people and your most seasoned people and your most junior people. But then you add benefits and healthcare and all this other stuff. Now, for the rest of the world, you guys would be horrified at the cost of healthcare in America and what companies have to add to the burden cost. Let's just say a person then typically on average costs $100K, right? Plus all the tool costs and their software costs, all their licensing costs, right? But it's like buying a large SUV in cash every year for each team member that you have on staff, right? So if you're going to be getting them an 8 gig RAM computer with an i5 processor, you're giving them a screwdriver instead of a drill. And if a company doesn't understand that, then let them muck around with really bad tech. It's not smart.
I 100% agree. I really like your point that the cheapest solution now often ends up being the most expensive solution in the long run, because you run into all these problems that wouldn't have popped up if you had just spent a little bit more and gone with someone a little bit more trustworthy. I think a really powerful way to explain it to a prospect that you're talking to. I agree that there are companies out there who will always choose the cheapest one. Like when we're pitching our services, we're not always the cheapest. There's oftentimes, I mean, you can find marketing people on Fiverr who will just say, "Oh, here's 100 backlinks for your website for $20." And if someone wants to go do that, and we've done our part of trying to convince them why that's a bad thing to do for their website, ultimately you sometimes have to let people go learn that lesson on their own. And we have had those prospects occasionally come back to us and say, "Okay, I went and tried this, it didn't work. I'm ready to spend more and figure it out with you guys."
Yeah, and I know for a fact that being a Pronto customer for over 10 years, we get consistent leads from our website. And if we were to give it to a marketing intern to vibe code,
right,
the website, there's so many elements to it, right? Or just build it like myself, it would not bring the same results. The ultimate point of the website is to actually reinforce your brand, make your brand stand out on the internet, and then actually bring you leads. If it's not doing that, then it doesn't matter how much you pay for it. And that's the same thing goes for technology. If you're buying refurbished computers that are very old, or if you're not investing in email security and you're constantly getting breaches, or your spam filter is completely over, there's no spam filter and your inbox is overrun, it is a detriment. It is a detriment to the business. So getting the right solution in place and the right partner in place for key elements in the business is absolutely critical.
I think all of this not only applies to talking to prospects, but applies to MSPs themselves too. Don't cut corners in your own tools that you're investing in or the own hardware. Have you seen that happen with MSPs before, where they've tried to cut those corners on standardization and had it sort of come back to bite them later?
Yeah, I think every MSP should be running a vCIO process on themselves. And the owners of the MSP should be sitting down with their vCIO. And if the owners of the vCIO, sit down with yourself and really analyze your MSP like a business. It is a business. And analyze your tech stack, analyze your computers. If you have engineers running on 7-year-old computers, that's a problem. Just because you can reformat them every year. Now, there are some hacks, right? You can change the hard drives. You wouldn't do that as much for a client and just swap out their hard drives for a newer hard drive and upgrade RAM and stuff, just because the cost of sending an engineer on site and a client being down versus. So there are some workarounds and stuff like that. But in general, you want your engineers working on multiple monitors. You want your engineers working on good hardware, and they should have a good tool stack. So I've seen so many MSPs that complain about profitability and other things, and they have no vCIO platform, for example. So that means they don't have a project engine, they don't have a standardization engine, they don't have a client leadership engine. And you could say the same thing for every element. If they don't have a solid web partner, then they shouldn't be complaining that their website is generating no leads and that they're losing business to an MSP that has a professional website, right? If you're not giving your engineers the right tech, then you can't be complaining that your techs are not as efficient to close tickets.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. It's I mean, the classic thing of you have to be a customer of your own business. It happens with agencies, marketing agencies all the time too, where their website is really out of date and hasn't been upgraded in 5-10 years because they're so focused on their clients, they don't pay any attention to themselves until it becomes a huge problem where they're not ranking anymore, they're not getting enough leads, and then they go, oh, now I got to figure out how to redo my own website. But if you build that process into how you operate and make yourself a customer of your own business, and don't give yourself the wiggle room to, push yourself aside and say, oh, well, this client must come first. I mean, I know that happens, but you have to make the time for your own business. Treat your business the way you would treat one of your clients. Otherwise, it's all going to fall apart at some point.
So yeah, thanks a lot for sharing all of the insights. This is all we had planned for this third episode.
Yeah, always great to spend time with you guys.
And we'll be sharing the information in the description below. And stay tuned for the last and fourth episode of this 4-part miniseries.